Hello and welcome to Before the Launch. I am your host, Brenda McGowan, and today we're going to talk about burnout during launches. So, I had this question come in from one of my Facebook group members, which was how do you deal with burnout during a launch? And this is such a great question because burnout is like synonymous with launching, right? When you think of launches, a lot of times you think of stress and pressure. And so I want to give you some ideas to help you with burnout around launches. And the first thing is I want you, and I'm looking down at some notes if you're watching me on YouTube, because I want to make sure I hit all of these points, which is launching is just a little stressful. And I know we're sold on this like the least stressful launch. And like, yes, you shouldn't have a launch where you literally want to burn it all to the ground, never launch again, want to go get a job, right? But I also think that you need to set expectations that launching is going to probably be a time where there's a little bit more tension, a little bit more stress, right? There's a lot of visibility. There is a lot, if you're not someone who's used to doing sales, you're having, there's so many things that go into a launch from visibility to copywriting to sales to all of these things that you should just know that if you feel a little bit of pressure or tension around a launch, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's more, okay, how am I going to handle this pressure or tension? And how am I going to prepare so that it doesn't become, to the point where, once again, you want to burn it to the ground. So I just want to set proper expectations that anytime in our business, we have what I would call like, highs and lows, right? Where things I always think about it as a roller coaster. Now, I want you to think of it as like a kiddie roller coaster, not a crazy roller coaster that throws you upside down and whips you to, all over the place. It's more of these like, okay, we're going to go up. There's going to be a little tension. Then there's going to be a little release. That's how it is in your business. There's times where you have to push a little harder. There's times where things are maybe once again a little more stressful. And then there's times where things are more low key. And anytime you come to a launch, it's most likely going to have a little bit more stress than when you are, on vacation with your kids in the middle of the summer and not launching anything. Okay. So the way that you can really make sure that you avoid burnout during launches is to create some space in your launches. And this is why I'm such a huge advocate of pre-launch, right? I want you to have space in your calendar because space does a few things. First of all, when you take the time to get a calendar out, right? What days you're going to launch, what days you're going to do your masterclass or your launch, what day you're going to start your pre-launch. When you start creating space around your calendar, you can be very intentional about saying no to certain things. You can be very intentional with time that you have. What happens a lot in launches is that people think they're so stressful and there's so much pressure because they haven't properly prepared and created space in their calendar to allow them to think through a strategy, think through all of the different assets that they're going to need to do some of that prep work, which takes the pressure off of a launch. The other thing a pre-launch does is that it does not mean that you are relying on a 7-day sales period or a 10-day sales period. You are spreading out your content. You're spreading out some of your sales efforts. And you are creating, once again, that space that you're not reliant. The way that we were taught to launch, and sometimes are taught to launch even now, is okay, we're going to have a masterclass on Thursday, and then we're going to open our doors for 7 days and we're going to sell really hard. Well, the problem with that is that it puts a lot of pressure on that short sales period. And right now, the market just isn't responding to that pressure or that urgency like it used to. And what happens too when your kids get sick? I think about my friend Dana Malstaff, and she's like, every time I launch, something happens, right? And it's kind of the way it's like Murphy's Law. But when you're not completely reliant on the 7 days, you are able to make sure that you can, once again, spread out the sales period. I think of one of pre-launch plan program students, and what actually happened is that she did a pre-launch and then she went to open her doors and her mom ended up in the hospital. And she was like, oh my gosh, had I not done a pre-launch, this would have felt so incredibly stressful. But because I did a pre-launch, I pre-sold, I wasn't completely reliant on that sales period. She actually had a super successful launch and went over goal with getting new members in her program, which leads me to the next point, which is pre-sell. I am such a huge advocate of doing pre-sales. Why do I like pre-selling so much? Because you can do a little bit of soft selling. You can, ask people, the people that are interested, that are ready to take action right now, you can scoop them up before the launch actually happens. What I hear sometimes, though, when I talk about pre-selling is that people are like, well, the people that were going to buy during launch, we're going to buy anyway. And no, that is not the case, because a pre-launch is doing the heavy lift of what someone needs to see, hear, and believe before they buy from you. So when you have an opportunity to pre-sell, it takes the pressure off of your launch. I just helped recently Laura Belgray. If you don't know Laura, she's amazing. Go follow her. And I just helped Laura sell, and actually it was a pre-launch, pre-sale campaign, 55% of the spots in her launch before she opened her doors. We did this in the spring, or I should say she did this in the spring. She doesn't officially launch until August. She was able to sell out 55% of her spots. And now I believe it's up to 70% of her spots before she ever launched. Okay, imagine the pressure that's taken off of you when you have 70%, not even 70%, even if it's 20%, 30%. And I'm going to be recording an episode about how I help Laura here in the near future. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so the other way that you can help avoid burnout during your launch is to expect a slower start, especially in 2025. What I'm seeing a lot with launches is that a lot of people are waiting till the last day to buy. And so I had one friend in particular, I'm pretty sure she said she had something like 90% of people buy on the last 2 days. So when you are mentally prepared to have a slower start, then when you do have a slower start, you aren't having all of that negative self-talk. Oh my gosh, is this launch not going to work? No, you have to see the launch through. My friend Marisa Corcoran talks about this all the time. Like, you have to see the launch through till the end. And I can tell you from experience, I personally had a launch, I think it was the one before last, where I had something like 70 or 80% of people buy on the last 2 days. Had I given up early during that launch, I wouldn't have seen the sales that I saw during that promotional period. So you have to go in mentally thinking, I don't care what happens on days 1, 2, 3, that mid-cart lull, I am going to see it through. And I am going to, for lack of better words, pretend like I am having the most successful launch no matter what, because people can feel your energy when you are confident, when you are showing up, when you are doing the things, when you're sending the emails, going on social media, when you're doing all of that, people can feel that confidence, and that confidence attracts them to you. They can also feel when you're not so confident, right? So just keep in mind that you always want to see your launch through till the end, no matter what happens. So the other thing that you want to do to help avoid burnout during a launch is to prepare. Like, I have a friend who always, gets a massage. I think it's on the last day of her launch. Like, she always plans to do something. Maybe for me, it's like, I got to get out and go on a walk every single day that I'm launching, because launching gives me like so much clarity. I always say, like, walking is my sanity. I know I have to walk every day, and sometimes I want to skip the walk, right? I want to get to work. I want to do other things. And I have learned, no, I need to go out and get some fresh air every day, especially while I'm launching. Another thing that could be helpful, my friend Jackie Acree, she teaches tapping I have recently done tapping. At first, when I heard of tapping, I thought it was like super woo, but it's really not. And go follow Jackie so that you can learn more if you don't know about tapping. But doing things like tapping, meditation, whatever it is to go and figure out what is going to calm your nervous system down during a launch period. The other thing that you want to do, and this is where we'll wrap up for today, is protect your peace. How do you protect your peace? Well, there's several different ways. But the first thing is people, I know during a launch, it's just customary for people to go, how is your launch going? And then if your launch is going terrible, it makes you feel worse, right? If your launch, you're not getting those numbers at the beginning of your launch, like we talked about earlier. And then all of a sudden you're like, what am I doing with my life? And maybe you're going and scrolling on Instagram and you're seeing someone else who just had a successful launch and it starts to mess with your head. So set an intention from the beginning to protect your peace. If someone asks you how your launch is going, you don't have to tell them, right? You can give them a very courteous answer like, I'm just at the beginning, so I can't wait to tell you more about it once I finish up with launching, right? You don't have to, tell someone how you're feeling in that moment. And that kind of brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up. Linda Perry, she actually came on and talked for my summit, I should say, for behind the launch. And during that, she talked about, or if my memory serves me correctly, like you have to think about the stories that you're telling yourself. Are those stories true? You could, at the very beginning of the launch, not have the numbers and think, oh my gosh, my launch is tanked, but you really haven't just seen it through. You don't know what the results are going to be, yet you've told yourself a false narrative that is not true. So protecting your peace during a launch is super important for you if that means not scrolling Instagram. If that means that you, once again, need to go on a walk. If this means that I know something that I personally do is I have some mantras set up. Like as soon as that negative self-talk starts to happen, I have to be like, hey, I'm going to have my biggest launch ever. This launch is going great. Like I had to talk to myself as if what I want has already happened. Now, if you've listened to this and you're like, okay, how do I pre-launch? How do I pre-sell? The pre-launch plan program is opening up in September. I will be giving you more information. But if it's something that you're interested in now, send me a DM. You can find me at Brenna McGowan Co. Or you can send me an email at brenna@brennamcgowan.co. And let's have a little discussion about whether or not something like the pre-launch plan program can help you pre-sell, create your biggest launch ever while avoiding the dreaded launch burnout. Thank you so much for being with me today.